Episode 4 of the off season, and we've got Matthew Whelan with us. Wheels, thanks for your time.
Thanks for having me, Benny.
It is NAIDOC week, and that's a real special week for Indigenous people. What does it mean for you?
I guess it's just a chance to reflect on Aboriginal history and Aboriginal culture and to celebrate it. So that's sort of one of the things we try to push down at the club. Would be NAIDOC week or Reconciliation week, just to get, I guess, a little bit of the Aboriginal history taught into people who probably didn't learn that at school. So certainly a big week on the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander calendar. But it's something very proud of this week and something to celebrate.
Some fans may not know that you actually still work for the club. Can you just explain a little bit about your role and what you do down there?
Yeah, so my role is, my title is the Indigenous Projects Officer. So that sort of entails welfare of the Indigenous players and their families. We've got a reconciliation action plan that we're in the process of doing our second one. Just sort of helping with that and sort of anything in the Indigenous space really. Basically it's just to educate, I guess, the club and all staff and players and hopefully supporters as well about Aboriginal culture and the certain way that Aboriginal people or Torres Strait Islander people do things, and that's sort of my goal is to, I guess, just to advise the club on what I think is the best way to go about things.
I know you've got a good relationship with Nev Jetta, work closely with him on the 2020 Indigenous Guernsey. Are you enjoying that sort of side of things?
Yeah, it's great. I mean, I think it was my last year, I think Nev got to the club, so to see sort of the progression he's made as a person and footballer, it's been fantastic. He's certainly a great leader, I think, amongst the Indigenous boys, but also I think just a great leader in general amongst everyone. So he's someone I sort of get a lot of he's my sounding board as well, so I sort of speak to him a fair bit. And then we sort of we just work on things together, I suppose, in which way we think's best. It was great to get him to do the Guernsey this year. I think it turned out fantastic, and obviously an amazing story behind it as well.
Over the past few years, the club's had a little bit of a side project with the Santa Teresa Oval in the Northern Territory. Can you give us an update on how that's going?
Yeah, so I think it's actually finally done now. So it's officially, I've got their first game in 1 or 2 weeks on the Oval. So so when we got there, we didn't know much about Santa Teresa, to be honest. We're just looking for a way to get the staff engaged in the Indigenous community. And when we spoke with Santa Teresa, they were happy enough to put us up for a night. So we didn't want to just go to the community, spend an hour or two there, and then just go away. You don't get the full experience. So we wanted to stay there overnight and sit around the campfire. And so we're out camping under the stars in swags and having kangaroo stew and that sort of stuff. So something I think a lot of the staff had never done before. So and then we wanted to give back to some of the programs that they do in their community, and one of the things they sort of said was the most important thing to them was the footy oval. Is there any chance they could help with grass? So there's a bit of a sort of tongue-in-cheek thing, but we said we'd look into it, and we did. And then was it 2 years later we've regrassed it, and now they've got lights there, so they can play footy under lights, which is fantastic. Obviously being desert, so don't have to play in the heat anymore. We've got a few other projects that we've got in the works as well, so something I'm really looking forward to.
It's a good story, that one. You grew up in Darwin. You came down to play in Victoria in 2000, joining the Demons. What was it like for you moving from those cultures?
I was lucky enough. I went to South Australia first, so I spent 2 years in the Sandful. Played under 19s my first year, and then seniors my second year for Woodville West Torrens Eagles. And then I think that's what prepared me for Melbourne a little bit. I reckon I would have struggled if I'd gone straight from Darwin to Melbourne. Just going to basically Adelaide's a big country town, really. So that was great for me. I had another mate that came with me to my first year in the 19s, and then we had a few more that had come down to try their luck. So that certainly made life a lot easier having those friends around me. Obviously, then I got drafted to Melbourne at the end of 99. And then 2000 was my first year, so I was lucky enough. Scott Chisholm and Jeff Farmer were at the club at that stage, and my sister was dating Scott Chisholm's brother, so I ended up moving in with Scott just on sort of the back of that. So we sort of families already knew each other, so he was a great help for me. I was able to pick his brain the whole time. we lived a fair way away from training, so we had some long car trips. So it proved me just asking 20 questions really. So it made my transition in to AFL a lot easier, having those two boys there to bounce ideas off and that sort of thing.
You feel like that transition for players now, 20 years later, has gotten a whole lot easier, and the AFL as a whole is a lot more accepting of the Indigenous players coming through?
I think so. Still got a long way to go though. I mean, not every club has sort of my role at their club, so which is disappointing. I mean, back when I was playing, this is something we were speaking about back in early sort of 2000s, so and it still hasn't eventuated to every club. So, and obviously with COVID now, it's probably going to make it even worse. A lot of free roles were lost, and I'm not sure how many of my roles survived at other clubs. So, but it's certainly a lot easier. I mean, they do those transitions, the inductions for the first year boys, but there's a lot more Indigenous boys that are getting drafted now across all teams. So it certainly makes it easier if you've got, especially in Melbourne, there's 10 teams. Sometimes you can catch up with family and friends who you have played with or against. So you have that sort of camaraderie there. And like I said, there's a lot more Indigenous boys at pretty much every club now, so it makes it easier.
Your last season was 2009. That was the first season for the likes of Jamie Bennell, Nev Jetta, Liam Jarrah, Aaron Davey was at the club. Did you enjoy sort of taking those younger boys under your wing a bit?
Yeah, it was great fun. Because I remember one year I had there was just me. I was the only one, and then Aaron came the following year. And we think we had Shannon Motlop and then Byron Pickett and a few other fellows. So to end that last year with 6 of us on the list, it was certainly great. We just had so much fun. Like, although we were losing a fair bit and by quite a lot, it was one of probably the most fun times I had, just being with so many brothers. And if you know many of the brother boys, they just we like to play practical jokes a fair bit and that sort of stuff, and it certainly made it fun.
As a player, people knew you as the wrecker. Did you always enjoy being a physical sort of footballer?
I certainly did. So I grew up playing rugby league and rugby union, so I knew tackling. That was what I knew. And my brother was bad into rugby. My brother never played footy. It was only because Dad wanted me to play footy that I tried it. He was born in South Australia, so he played footy and cricket, and I followed in his footsteps, sort of thing, as well as rugby. But I think having that grounding, rugby league and rugby union, tackling certainly held me in good stead for footy. That was my favourite bit about footy, was just tackling and hitting blokes, and the bigger they are, the easier it was for me, I think. So, it was good fun.
Your final game was game number 150. It was a send-off with Paul Wheatley and Russell Robertson. Was that a special day for you?
Yeah, it's a real day because, it's the end of your career, but it is the end of your career. So there's excitement and there's trepidation and a bit of, you're scared. You're not sort of sure what to do. I remember after the game, we're just sort of standing there and just knowing it's all over. It's a weird one, so it's sort of an empty, exciting feeling, but it's also an empty feeling because you're never going to do this again. So, it's but the fact that I got drafted with Paul Wheatley and then I ended my career with him as well. And he's one of my best mates to this day because I lived with him for a couple of years there as well. So, our wives are best friends, so that certainly helps as well. So, but it was a great day, and it's one I fondly remember, even though we were on the wrong end of the result.
Played 150 games. You're a life member of the club. Did you ever think something like that would be possible back in your early days growing up?
No, to be honest, I wasn't really thinking about footy. It was more rugby. I was more a rugby man, so it was only just through probably the pathways that the AFL and all the local state AFL grassroots level, all the pathways have for juniors. I think it was better than what they had in rugby league and rugby union, and that's probably what made me choose AFL as a pathway. I mean, I started to progress through the ranks pretty quickly, so I didn't sort of take up footy till I was 13. But like I said, they just had more opportunities at that younger age. So there's always, always development training squads and that sort of stuff, and that probably kept me more interested, to be honest. So I didn't have to wait as long to sort of do that kind of stuff again. like I said, once I sort of made the transition to move to Adelaide, I thought I'd have a fair crack at it, and because I was overlooked in a few drafts before that. They said I was too slow to play AFL. I've done pretty much all I could do in Darwin, and so I thought I'd give it a crack in what I thought was the next best league outside the AFL, which was the SANFL, and yeah, so it took me a while to sort of get there and find my feet. But once I did, I found it. Yeah, I was able to adapt pretty quickly. So yeah.
Well, it's a great story. I really appreciate you giving us a bit of an insight. Thanks for your time, Wheels.
All right, thanks, Benny.